What's going on there, YouTube? And welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so it's time for us to basically jump back into our Marvel Siege reading order. But today, guys, we are going to pick up with a book called The Sentry, The Falling Sun. Now, guys, this book is one of the 4 books that we are going to cover that deals with the aftermath of the Siege event. Because, guys, remember, in our last video, we covered Siege number 4. And with that book right there, well, we wrapped up the main series. I can't talk, guys, sorry. We wrapped up the main Siege event storyline. But with this book right here, though, guys, this is one of the 4 books that kind of deal with the aftermath of the Siege event. Now, guys, remember, back in Siege number 4, Thor, he killed Robert Reynolds, aka the Sentry, aka the Void. Thor killed off Robert Reynolds. He took his body and he threw that body into the sun, hoping the Void would never come back. Because, guys, as we saw back in Siege number 4, the Void was kicking our heroes' butt. They stood not one chance, not one small bit a chance against the Void. And so when the Void turned back into his basic human form, Thor killed Robert Reynolds, took his body, and said, "I am throwing your body into the sun, hoping that the Void will never come back." Now, with this book right here, though, guys, this is a book where you have a few heroes come together to pay their respect to the Sentry at his tombstone, at a graveyard. It's them sharing one memory they have with the Sentry. Now, guys, we do pick up with a character called Billy Turner. Now, real quick side note. Billy Turner, he was the best friend of the Sentry. He was the best friend of the Sentry. And so when word got out, the Sentry died, he was the one who handled everything. He said, "You know what? I'm going to go out there, get his tombstone, and make sure that his tombstone is right here in this graveyard. Because if we had his body, if Thor did not throw his body into the sun, if we had his body, he will want to be laid right here next to his wife, who also died earlier in our Siege reading order. But he will want to be laid right next to his wife, right here in this spot in this graveyard." And so right now, you kind of have him just walk by and kind of like, look and say, "I can't believe you're dead. My best friend is gone. I can't believe that." Now, you do have a few characters kind of all gather around the tombstone, different sets of heroes. You do have the Fantastic Four, you have Daredevil, you have Doctor Strange, and a couple X-Men like Emma Frost, Cyclops, and, Rogue. Now, the reason why these heroes are all here, because these heroes were somewhat close to the Sentry. And so you kind of have each hero sit down with us, the readers, as they tell a story about them working alongside with the Sentry on how he was such a great man. He was a great superhero. Now, you do have Tony Stark kind of start off first. And the thing is, though, this is Marvel kind of reminding us that Tony Stark, he was an alcoholic. He was. If you guys read a storyline called Demon in the Bottle, with that storyline right there, we saw Tony Stark battling against his addiction with alcohol. And so you have Tony say, "Listen, when I was battling against my issues, with my alcoholic issues, Robert Reynolds, the Sentry. He was the one man I had in my corner who was helping me fight against my addiction. He was there for me. He kind of guided me into the light. He showed me the way, saying, listen, put down the bottle. Put it down. Because when you drink, Tony, you change. You're different completely. So you need to put down the bottle. And so it's Tony saying, if the Sentry did not step in, Tony Stark could still be an alcoholic. Now, we do jump over to Doctor Strange. Now, guys, when it comes to Doctor Strange, it's kind of cool because Doctor Strange is this character where he's kind of giving us a nice little brief history over the Sentry, kind of reminding us the whole history of the Sentry. And what I mean is that back when, like, I want to say the year 1999 or the year 2000, when Marvel first introduced the Sentry, their goal was to say the Sentry is not really a new character. He's been around in comics since the 1960s. We just never wrote about him because the world forgot about the Sentry. And what I mean is that when our heroes first were introduced to us back in the 1960s with Spider-Man, the X-Men, Fantastic Four, and the Avengers, they were saying the Sentry was there in the background. But back then, the Sentry was fighting against the Void. And the Void got out, and the Void was basically wreaking havoc across the world. And so you had the Sentry fight against the Void, but you had Reed Richards make a machine to make the world forget about the Void, forget about the Sentry. And that's why we never saw him in comics in the 1960s, in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, because the world forgot about him because of Reed Richards. But the thing is, though, you have Doctor Strange say, listen, while we were sitting there waiting for Reed to finish his project, I watched the Sentry fight the Void in his mind for a long period of time. And the thing is, you have Mr. Strange, I don't know why I said Mr. Strange, Doctor Strange, you have him say, that right there is a true hero. Because he is fighting against a powerful demon who can wipe out the whole universe day in and day out. Day and night, this man is fighting against the Void. And you have Doctor Strange say, that right there shows how powerful he is, how great a hero he is, because he's not trying to just protect the world. He is trying to protect the universe. That's how powerful the Void is. The Void could wipe out things across the universe. And the Sentry is what he was. He was fighting that day in and day out. And you have Doctor Strange say, that is a true hero right there. Now, real quick, guys, we do jump over to Rogue. And the thing is, though, guys, with Rogue, this is kind of like a quick little 1-page, 2-page thing. Because, guys, when it comes to Rogue, Rogue has the power to take folks' powers away. If you touch her skin, well, hey, you lose your powers, but you also lose your memories. But the thing is, though, the Sentry was so powerful that Rogue never really affected him. Like, she was able to hug him, to kiss him, to be with him and everything. And so that's kind of Marvel saying, hey, listen, the Sentry, yeah, he was married. He did love his wife, but he kind of had a thing for Rogue on the side. And so with him dying, Rogue saying he was the only person in the world that I could touch, who could hug me and be with me. Now, real quick, guys, we do pick up with Thor. And the thing is, we come to find out when it comes to the Sentry, When it comes to his mother, his mom has no clue that her son is dead. Her son's body is right now being burned up supposedly in the sun. She has no clue yet. And so Thor, the man who killed her son, he goes over there and he says, listen, we met a long time ago. We met at your son's wedding. And you know what? You and I danced together. I want to give you one last dance, but also tell you some sad information about your son. And it's kind of like, dang, Thor, like, I do not think you're the man who should be telling the lady that you killed her son. I do not think you are the right person to do it. But for Thor, he's kind of like, listen, I killed her son. So I have to be the one to tell her that her son is dead. The Sentry is no longer around. Now, you do have a few more characters kind of give us a brief story about their times with the Sentry. But guys, that's the whole book right there. It's showing us the Sentry touch our heroes in different ways. Rogue, Iron Man, Doctor Strange. Matter of fact, there is a brief story with the Thing, but to me, honestly, I'm not going to cover it. But the thing is, you have Marvel saying the Sentry was not just a hero. He was a friend, an ally. He guided people in the right direction, and he showed the world how to be a hero. And guys, this is me just wrapping up this video. Now guys, if you did like today's video, please leave me a like down below and also subscribe for more comic book stories in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read, let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But anyways guys, I'm out of here, and I'll see you on the next comic book video. Later guys.